Kind of digging this Monday routine that we've got going here at 7 o'clock. We talk about the news, you send in your comments and questions, then we have a bit of a conversation, and that conversation recently has been about deceased voters. It was popping off of the inbox over the weekend. I appreciate everybody who wrote in. See, on Friday, we talked about ballots that came from voters who cast a ballot early or in mail-in ballots and then died before Election Day. Now, normally, elections officials will throw out these votes, but on Friday, the Wake County Board of Elections did something unique. They accepted 3 of them. In 2 cases, the children of those voters, they came in and they begged the board to accept their father's ballots. In that 3rd case, it came from an 18-year-old cancer patient, a girl who voted early and then died the next day. A couple of board members said that despite the stories that they heard and how emotional they are, pulling on the heartstrings, they still shouldn't break the rule. But in the end, all 3 votes were counted. Now, I'd argue that the board did the right thing. When I vote, I'm not just doing it for me. I'm thinking about, society, my kids, the world that they will inherit. And I got lots of emails from folks saying they agree with me. Margaret wrote and said 100% of these votes should be counted. This was one of the last things these people did for their benefit, for their beliefs, honor their choice. Candy said, this is just ridiculous. They voted. That's another dumb rule that needs to be thrown out. And Kelly said, I think their votes should be counted. They were alive and voted as required. Most of you seem to think this is kind of a no-brainer, right? But it really isn't. Not even close. Mark wrote, what if I cast a vote and then am convicted of a felony shortly thereafter? Does my vote get disqualified? So we asked the Board of Elections about this, and we're waiting on a response. But since felons aren't allowed to vote in North Carolina, I think it's safe to assume in this unique hypothetical case, that vote would be tossed out. It would be disqualified. They weren't a felon when they filled out the ballot, but they became a felon before that vote was counted. Should we count it? Teresa asked, why were the other votes not counted? If they are similar situations, all should have been counted, not just the 3 with compelling stories. And that's a great point, Teresa. The county threw out the other 42 votes that came from people who voted early or by mail and then died before Election Day. Should exceptions only be made for those people who do have a good, compelling, sad story or a family member that comes in to fight for them at that meeting? That's one of the reasons that having a hard, fast rule can actually be helpful. You already know the answer, regardless of the story behind it. It may have sounded a bit insensitive to some people to hear it, but it's why that one of the Wake County Election Board members, who you see here, argued that they follow the rule and disqualify the vote, that having a rule, something in writing, can make these types of decisions a lot easier. John appears to be on this side of the argument. He wrote, early voting is casting a ballot early. Voting day is November 5th. Just because you fill out a ballot doesn't mean you voted. If you're dead before that date, you never voted. Dead people do not vote. Angela spoke to the more, deeper, more personal part of voting and said it this way. My opinion after my death doesn't matter. My opinion doesn't matter after death. Interesting. Doesn't seem true, though, does it? This entire country is built on the opinions of dead people. Let's go back further. The Roman Emperor, Marcus Aurelius, said death is inevitable, but we can choose we can choose to live fully, leaving a lasting legacy of wisdom and virtue, impacting the world positively. He wrote that opinion about 1,800 years ago, and despite me stumbling through it, I like it. And you don't need some dramatic example from Marcus Aurelius to understand this. My grandfather died 8 years ago, and when I'm faced with something difficult, I always think, what would my pop do here? What would he say? What would he think? Let's not take that part of voting for granted. The emotional part, the romantic part of it. Yes, when it comes to who won, it's technical, numbers and counting votes and that sort of thing. But the question of how they won is a lot deeper. It's a lot more personal. Yes, people vote for policy and party and that sort of thing, but they also vote when they're inspired, when they believe in something. And we live in a country where that feeling can inspire an 18-year-old with cancer, living her last 48 hours on Earth, to spend a little of that precious time filling out a ballot, being an American, caring about what she's leaving behind for the people she loved. That feels like something we should cherish. Angela ended her email that she sent by saying, try not to contaminate the conversation with your personal opinion next time. No. Angela, that's this part of the newscast. This is how we do the in-depth part of the 7 o'clock news. We talk about stuff. It's a conversation. I say my thoughts, you say yours, kind of helps us to get to know each other, maybe fill in a few of our blind spots. We all have them. So let's keep the conversation going. Tell me what you want the news to cover. Send me an email, dan@wrl.com. What topics need us to do an in-depth segment? Let's think critically about the world around us. Let's have a conversation. Tell me what's on your mind, and we'll go in depth.